looking back when I first started this channel and decided to button up the old Lamb Dog channel, which I'm doing a very poor job of buttoning up. I had a lot of choices I could have made. I wish I had done the Matthias voice, because I used to have a TikTok thing where I literally changed my voice and put on the demeanor of an old man, but I'd tell these really raunchy stories about chasing after hookers in Tijuana and running dope out of Juarez. And it was called Matthias's Minute. It was actually somewhat popular. I don't know if the videos are still up, but maybe I can do the Matthias voice for you. Well, you know, my great-grandpappy always told me, never pay more than $10 for a blowjob and make sure she washes her mouth out with bourbon first. Just little things like that. And then I had these moments of righteousness a couple years later, but and then I thought, oh, they're never gonna believe that I'm an old person if they see my face. But then I grew my beard out, and there was plenty of gray. And I worked with this guy named Jeff, and he used to give me some feedback. He'd just be laughing his ass off while he was recording it. And I'd be like, well, looks like my studio help is having a little trouble maintaining their professionalism. Let me tell you something about a professional lady of the night. The voice was a total ripoff of, there's a show called Bubba the Love Sponge, and they do some of these character voices, and they had this one guy, Ned Schnitt, which reminds me of, Sned, yours, kind of reminds me, and he kind of had that same voice, and it was a similar act. And it was trippy and funny that this elderly person would tell such racy stories, and some of them would get bad. Like Ned's stories are nothing compared to mine. Like he'd out and out get naughty about the kinks that him and his old lady had, and that sort of thing. But it would be exhausting, and I don't think I could have made the 15 or 20 minute videos that we have now. It would work well in a group setting, if we did a 2-person podcast or something along those lines. Which brings me to a comment Econ Recon made in my video where I don't remember which video it was. Oh, the Two Truths one. And kind of looking around and thinking, where do we end up? I say that we don't necessarily have to end up in a bad place. I would say, much like what Econ said when he was in a checkout line of a counter, and one magazine says Brad and Angelina get married, and the other magazine says Brad and Angelina break up. When people see that, then you see you got a mess on your hands. Maybe you start from number one and think, well, I don't need to have that sort of duality. I don't need to be a walking dichotomy. I'll bring truth into the world. Be the type of person to say what you mean. Example, passive-aggressive behavior, not cool. If something upsets you or something doesn't seem right, somebody asks you, communicate it, and communicate it directly and with a good demeanor. Because that's really two truths, right? If you're having a conversation with someone, not even a conversation. Let's say you come up to me and I'm down in the dumps. And you say, what's wrong? What's wrong, Captain? And I just go, oh, nothing. Well, I think we've got a case of two truths two times. One, you say, hey, what's wrong? Which you don't care what's wrong. And then two, I say nothing when something is what's wrong. If we can be honest, if we can somehow surround ourselves with friends and or people that love us or people that we trust, you can really ask those questions, or you can really be honest. And you can say, hey, you seem troubled. You good? And the person can answer, yeah, I can't figure out what it is, but yeah, I'm good. I can hack it. Now we're good. Will more and more of that happen? I say in my camp, it will, because I'm very fortunate to work to be that kind of person. And there's a chance, just like what I'm telling you with these youngsters coming into work, you've got a decent percentage of people employed that seem to have a good head on their shoulders in my area. There's a few business owners that seem to have a good head on their shoulders in my area. I'm a fan of small business in that regard. Some of these people have very good philosophies, and they don't need a hand up. They don't need a hand out. They just need resources, and they get the resources to implement and do the job they want to bring out. So what I'm trying to say is it can be okay. You can argue the government's doing this and the media's doing that, but it may not matter. And you may not have to let it matter. Be it you end up in the black market or whatever, you know. Things that encourage me. Some people are not a fan, but the Joe Rogan podcast encourages me that it gets millions of views. His popularity. I believe that sort of long-form discussion can push us through and get us where things need to go. Because a 3-hour discussion really can evaporate the duplicity that you run into when we're talking memes and headlines. I think it really can. And I don't want to bring it up again, but because I actually pulled that video down. But a certain event that happened a couple years ago, the report is actually 845 pages long about it. And I'm thinking about going to the trouble of reading the whole thing. And I mean, we can criticize like, oh, you only showed certain footage. Well, if the end report is 845 pages, you know, I'm sorry if the Saturday cartoon version didn't show certain fucking things. Well, your video doesn't show certain things either. Why don't you put on your spectacles and read the 845-page report? Not you, the other guy. You can do what you want.